Well, hello and welcome to another episode of the Stogie Review video review. If you're not familiar with the Stogie Review, I am Walt, one of the co-founders, and I'm here to bring you a weekly cigar video review. And this week, the cigar up for review is the Isle de Cuba Aged Maduro. Now, this is a Honduran cigar, which is produced by Altadis. Now, this cigar in particular is a Toro, which comes out to a 50 by 6. It's got a Connecticut broadleaf Maduro wrapper, as well as a Connecticut broadleaf Maduro binder. The filler is a mixture of Dominican and Nicaraguan tobaccos, and from the literature I've seen so far, it's a proprietary blend, so no one else can buy this particular mixture, and it's specifically segregated for this cigar. Now, the price tag for these are around $6.70 a piece, and that is MSRP. If you head over to JR Cigars, they've got boxes of 25, and they start at about $140 and go up. Now, the brand itself, as I mentioned, is made in Honduras, and it's produced by Altadis. Now, the brand president, his name is Daryl Lesser, I think, Leiser, butchering his name, but at any rate, he had a vision to create a cigar which closely resembled his absolute favorite cigar. And from the literature I've read, it seems that cigar that this was modeled after was a 1956 Monte Cristo No. 3, a Havana. So Daryl's dream was to create a cigar that closely resembled his favorite cigar, and sometime later he began producing these cigars for himself and friends. And since then, he's moved to make them available to the public. Now, from what I understand, the brand is about 3 years old now, and the Isle de Cuba line, it's consisted of two selections, which is the Aged Maduro and the Classic. Now, the Classic is very much like the Aged Maduro, with the exception of it has a Connecticut shade wrapper rather than the Maduro, and I actually think the binder is different as well. But and as per the show this year in Vegas, two more cigars were added to the line: the Wango Tango, and the other one is Blend 376. Now, the one that I'm smoking tonight, the Aged Maduro, is it's consisted of 5 sizes: a Corona, Robusto, Toro, Bellicoso, and Churchill. And as I mentioned in the start of the video, that these cigars are packaged in boxes of 25, and they start at about $140 if you head over to JR Cigars. Now, with the brand information out of the way, let's move on to the pre-light. First thing that struck me a bit odd about this cigar was it is extremely dark. I've had 2 of these prior to this one, so this is my third, and every time I pull it out of the cellophane sleeve and start to look it over, I'm amazed at how dark it is. It strikes me as almost unnaturally dark. Now, I've smoked, this will be my third. I've never gotten the black lipstick from dye or anything, so I'm absolutely positive this cigar is not dyed. Whether or not it's boiled or steamed, I'm not sure, which is it's a common practice to get Maduros even darker than they already are, which is to implement heat and pressure. You can either boil them or steam them, and it'll I think, I'm not sure whether it turns the sugar in the leaf black, or it turns something in the leaf to sugar, which turns black. But in any case, the wrapper gets darker, and I think that may be the case here. It's just very, very dark. Now, the color itself, it's a little mottled. If you kind of look at it to the light, you can see tiny little dimples of a lighter brown color, almost like someone went over the cigar with like a heavy nap roller. If you ever rolled paint on a wall with those heavy nap rollers, you can see the little dimples, the low spots. And you get that same sort of effect throughout the cigar. If you, holding it to the light again, if you kind of look across the wrapper, you can see that it's nice and oily, and it's got these nice crystallized specks throughout, on random spots throughout the cigar. And that is what many people call plume. Now, it's not covered in it or anything, there's just specks here and there. Just a little sparkle. As you rotate the cigar, you'll see, well, I'm seeing several. The aroma on the cigar is very heavy, and that's another thing that you notice right off the bat, is that it's got a very distinct, very heavy aroma, and it kind of reminds me of damp straw. But it's pretty musky, very heavy. Now, handling a cigar, it feels very firm, and I get the impression it's going to have a stiff draw just by the look of the foot. Everything looks very tight and compacted. Very little space in between the filler. The only thing I am noticing that's a problem is there's a soft spot in between the band and the cap, right up in here. And I've noticed that with all three of these cigars now. I make it a point to check the consistency of the cigar, and I've noticed that soft spot on all of them. They all seem to have a soft spot up toward the head. Now, what's next? You know what, I think that's good enough. Before I cut the cap, one thing I noticed as I was making my notes here is that the cap is very small. It was neatly applied, but it was very small. I used my polio cutter, quickly removed it as I was talking earlier, and just as I suspected, the pre-light draw is a little firm, and I get that impression by looking at the foot. So, and the fact that it feels pretty firm. But anyway, the draw is firm. But I'm going to get started. Now, to pair, I'm pairing this cigar up with coffee, although it's beginning to get a little late. About 7:30 now, and I'm just now getting started. But I'm pairing it up with coffee because that's just what I felt it would go best with the earlier times I smoked this cigar. So we're going to go right ahead and try it with coffee and see how it works out. Now, as I'm toasting a cigar, I'm beginning to smell this this woody aroma. It's actually kind of pleasant. Well, it's been about 40 minutes now, and as you can see, the ash on the end of the cigar is very light in color. Just before I turned the camera on, I gave it a firm tap, and it broke clean off the cigar. No messy ash on my lap or whatnot. It's staying very neat. The burn line is very thin. It's crisp. It's a nice thin black line all the way around the cigar. Very even. The draw is still a little firm. I feel like I have to work on the cigar a little bit more than I would like to get a mouthful of smoke, but the payoff to that is just a dense, creamy smoke that it just goes very well with the coffee that I'm drinking. The two are just going very well. Like this was meant to be a coffee cigar. I don't know. Now, the body is mild to medium, so it's fairly light for this time of the evening. It's about 8 o'clock here, and at this point I really think this would be more suitable for earlier on in the day, but because I wanted to get this review finished for this week, I didn't have the option of smoking it in the morning before work. That would mean I'd have to get up at about 3 o'clock to start the review. So I'm smoking it now, and I'm really not... I don't feel like I'm missing out on anything. You know, the cigar is not too light for this time in the evening. So, while it may seem a little light for me, it might be right up someone else's alley. It's going very well. Now, along with that mild to medium body, there is a very smooth, creamy finish to it that lasts a few minutes, and as soon as it begins to subside, and by that I mean you take a puff, you blow the smoke out, you let your palate rest for a few seconds, the creaminess will start to fade, and then I get this nice sort of bitterness to it, and what it reminds me of is Guinness Stout. You take a sip of Guinness. It's not very heavy and thick. It's almost got like a watered down creaminess to it, and as soon as that begins to fade, you get that nice bitter bite from the stout. And I'm getting this similar flavors from the cigar, and I find that whole comparison very enjoyable. Now, in the flavor department, I'm getting a predominant cocoa flavor, and what really sets the cocoa flavor off is the sweetness I'm getting on my lips. And I'm not quite sure if it is sweetener added to the pectin that held the cap on, or if it's just a naturally sweet Maduro wrapper. Whatever the case is, I'm getting a sweetness on the lips and the tip of the tongue, and it really amplifies the cocoa flavor. It just comes out very strong, very pleasant, and just like the finish subsides and you get a sort of a bitterness, the cocoa subsides and you get sort of a nutty flavor. And the dynamic of the whole thing works out very well. And I'm kind of glad that I'm getting this cigar and smoking it in this manner. The first two that I smoked them while I was grilling, so I wasn't able to pay too much attention to them. I was taking notes and whatnot, but this cigar is just a whole new animal when you sit down and relax and try to enjoy it that way. So it's definitely a pleasant surprise from what I was used to, or what I was accustomed to from the first two cigars. So anyway, with that said, I'm enjoying the cigar. It's going very well. The draw is a little firm, as I'm sure I mentioned already, but as a result, the burn rate is very slow. As I said, it's about 40 minutes now, so I don't know, about an inch and a half into it. So I've got a long ways to go. And, I think this is going to be one of those very slow burning cigars that lasts, well over 2 hours for a slow smoker such as myself. So I'm going to take a quick break. We'll see how the burn rate goes. I'll be back. We'll do the second, third, and see how the Cuba goes.
Itself that way. There's nothing to be done.
Well, as you can see, I'm progressing right along. I'm into the second third now, and it's been roughly an hour and a half. And the feel of the burn rate is about normal. Judging by where I'm at now, I still think I'm going to get about 2.5 hours out of it before it's finished. So it feels about right for my smoking rate, and I really think that's a direct result of the draw being a little firm, the cigar being really packed with tobacco. It feels firm to begin with, and I'm really happy with the way it's performing. The burn line is very crisp. It's got a slight waviness now that I've knocked the ash off, but it's well within reason. The ash itself is very light in color. It's firm. It takes a firm tap to knock it off the foot of the cigar, and the smoke remains cool and plentiful. Even though it's a little bit of work to get the smoke through the cigar, it stays cool. It's very dense and just kind of wafts around the room. It's very nice, densely thick feeling smoke. Now, in terms of body, we've made a little bit of progression. It's a little closer to medium now, but I don't know that I'd quite call it medium bodied. It's still in the upper end of mild to medium, and the finish it's still creamy, but it's not quite as bitter as it was earlier on. Now, that bitterness, I described it as the same type of bitterness you get from something like Guinness Stout. I really enjoyed that bitterness. It sort of punched the palate and made me salivate and really got me moving towards the flavors. That I really like that. It's beginning to fade now, and the cocoa flavors are coming through richer, more complex. So it's a fair trade-off. I'm getting more of this rich cocoa flavor, a little bit less bitterness, and it's just the cigar's complementing itself very nicely. Now, the sweetness that I was getting on the tip of my tongue and on my lips isn't quite as sweet as it was earlier. So all around, the cigar is beginning to settle down. The flavors are becoming more rich, more complex. They're picking up more character along the way. And the cigar really settles down and just starts to produce this very rich, heavy flavor, which is very nice. Now, I'm just about finished with my coffee, and I don't plan on getting any more. But the cigar just goes very well with a black cup of coffee. The coffee's got just a little bit of bitterness to it. It leaves my palate just a little dried out, and as soon as I take a puff of the cigar, I'm immediately salivating, and I'm getting this nice creamy flavor and these nice rich cocoa tones. It's very nice. Now, the secondary flavor is still that nutty aroma, or I should say that the aroma that I'm getting in the background is like a nutty aroma. Now, that's pretty much the same. That hasn't changed throughout the smoke. But, everything's it's melding together very well, and I'm really enjoying it. The fact of the matter is, this cigar is just a totally different animal than what I smoked previously. Now, I can understand why it's different. The first two I smoked when I was outside, it was very humid, very warm, and I wasn't picking up anywhere near the number of subtleties that I am now. So it's just so much better when I'm relaxing and focusing on the cigar than when this really isn't something you just pick up to smoke while you're outside or whatever. It'll be good, but you're not going to get the richness that you will if you sit down and focus on it. So I'm very happy with it. The burning characteristics are very nice. It's very well behaved. It's not flaking around. The draw produces a good volume of smoke. The flavors are very nice, and the only real change, or the significant change from the first third to the second third, is I'm beginning to get a spiciness now. It's like a mild tingling sensation on the tip of the tongue, and you get it through the nose when I pass the smoke through my sinuses. And earlier on when I got it, it was very mild. It's beginning to progress, and it hangs around just a little bit longer. But as soon as it fades, it's gone. There's no lingering spicy tones or anything. It just leaves a very clean finish. The finish to the spiciness is very clean and refreshing. It's nice. So second third is going very well. As I mentioned, I'm at about an hour and a half now. So I've got, I don't know, probably another 40 minutes until I start the final third. So sit tight. I'll be back. We'll do the final third and wrap up the cigar.
Well, I came into a scalding life a few short years ago, and ever since I lead a life of misery and woe. My wife, she is a tyrant around the room, and I should sell me to the devil for a glass or two of gin.
Sure, I'll get up and go to work as mild as any man, and she'll get up and dress herself and go and have her dram. I never chance to say a word, it's well I know my doom. She'll follow me with the fire shovel up and down the room.
And if the devil will take her, I thank him for his pain. I swear to God I'll hang myself if I get married again. And if the devil will take her, I thank him for his pain.
Well, welcome back, and I'm still plugging along with my Alda Cuba, and I just passed the 2-hour mark, and so far the cigar is going very well. The only downside at this point is the cigar is beginning to get a little warm on the fingers, and beginning to get a little bit of a hot spot on the tip of my tongue. Now, I would think that that's a result of, again, that firm draw. It forces me to puff a little harder on the cigar, and ultimately it heats the cigar up a little bit. Now, it's not becoming bitter or pungent, at least not bitter in a bad way. So the smoke is still pleasant. Even with the firm draw, I'm still getting a good solid mouthful of this dense smoke that's very flavorful. The body is probably about medium now. I think I'd be comfortable saying it's medium. in the flavor department, the spice that I was getting before that came through in the sinuses is much heavier now. I'm getting it not only on the tip of my tongue, but along the more or less the entire surface of my tongue, and it's a little stiffer through the nose. The cocoa flavors have intensified a little bit, and the bitterness in the finish it's picked up slightly, but it hasn't really changed a whole lot since the second third. It's less than it was to start with. Now, the cocoa flavors that we're getting, that we're picking up more character and becoming more complex, continue to do so throughout the final third. And the smoke just has this very rich, pleasant flavor to it. Now, the finish, as I mentioned, it's a little more bitter than it was before, and I keep saying bitter in a good way. I just keep thinking of that stout sort of flavor where you get this nice creaminess, and then as soon as that begins to fade, you get a little punch of bitterness that does a really nice job of getting you to salivate, and it just brings everything together. Now, on occasion, I'm getting a nice sort of citrus flavor, and it's very minute. It comes and goes very quickly, and I get it more or less as soon as I pull the cigar away from my mouth and I begin to blow the smoke out. I get this sort of citrusy aroma that, as I said, it doesn't last very long. The burn rate is still nice and slow. It's getting a little warm, but still, it's a very solid, well-constructed cigar. The ash stays very firm. It's not flaky and falling all over the place. It's nice and compact. Takes a nice firm tap with your finger to knock it off into the ashtray. So the burning characteristics have been very nice. Again, I still have that nice, crisp, very thin burn line, which is ideal, at least for me anyway. Now, my overall impressions of the cigar, I enjoyed it very much. I think, I said this already, but I think this cigar is best suited for when you have time to devote to it. The others that I smoked while I was outside, they were, I don't know, I guess the best way to put it is they were mediocre. And I really think that I didn't pick up all the extra flavors and the extra complexity from the cigar because I was active and I wasn't really paying attention to it as much as I should have. But now that I'm focusing on the cigar, I'm really enjoying it. And I think it went very well with the coffee. I haven't had any more in about, 45 minutes. So I think this cigar goes very well with coffee, and I think it would be a very good addition to my humidor as a morning type cigar. Something that I'd smoke late morning, early afternoon, maybe after breakfast, with maybe the second, maybe third cup of coffee throughout the day. I just think it makes for a very solid smoke at that point in the day. And I don't think it would be overwhelming or too much. For something later on in the evening like now, it's about 9:30 now. It's still very flavorful and comes through, but I think it would be better suited earlier on in the day. Now, the only thing that I don't quite like about the cigar is the price point of $6.70. I think it's a little high, but I really think you get what you pay for in this cigar. It's about $1.70 higher than my comfort zone, so to speak. But I think the closest cigar to compare this to would be something like an Ashton Aged Maduro. I think you get more flavor, it's more complex than the Ashton, and you save a little bit of money with this cigar over the Ashton. So I definitely think this is probably the better buy. If I were to stand in a cigar shop and look at the shelf and there was this cigar on one side and the Ashton on the other, 9 times out of 10 I think I'd reach for this cigar over the Ashton. And I really did enjoy the Ashton Maduro. So all in all, I liked it. I'd like to be a little less than it is, but you're going to pay for it, and it's a good quality cigar. So with that said, again, I enjoyed it and look forward to smoking some more. But until next week, and actually, what am I going to be smoking next week? I do this at the end of every video, I'm not quite sure. It is definitely going to be a Los Blancos cigar, but I'm not quite sure which one it's going to be. I have a couple of them, and the only one I've smoked so far has been the Sumatra. So I'm not quite sure if it's going to be the Sumatra, or if I get a chance to smoke some of the others, I may switch over and do one of those. So I'll have to drop a comment in this review, a few days before the next review is published, and I'll let you know which one I'm going to be smoking. So until then, happy smoking.